Today, a long overdue vinyl update featuring a bunch of genres: jazz, blues, rock, metal, all that and more coming up next. Hi, my name is Frank. Welcome back to Channel 33 RPM, your channel for vinyl gear and more. I've said this on previous episodes, but I've really become more selective lately in the records that I'm buying. I want to make sure that it's worth my money. So I got a handful of records for you that I'm going to show you, and I got to tell you, I'm digging all of these. First up is an artist I know many of you are familiar with, but he was new to me. I'm talking about Gary Clark Jr. I recently picked up his 2019 album called This Land. So Gary is a blues guy, but what I really dig about him is that he's taking a really fresh approach to the whole genre, which is obviously a very traditional genre. I mean, it's got his blues licks, but he's combining it with elements of hip-hop, soul, reggae, rock. If you listen to tracks like Got to Get Into Something, it's full of fuzzed out guitar, and it's got a chant-along chorus that really sounds like an homage to The Clash. Then there's my favorites, including the lead-off track, This Land, the lyrics which address racism in modern America. I'm also really digging Pearl Cadillac, which combines falsetto vocals with a huge John Bonham beat and Prince-like guitar. So far, this is my favorite album I've purchased this year. Next up, we have the latest release from one of my favorite bands. This album came out in March of 2020. If you can see that, this is the newest release from a band called Lucifer. This is their third album, and it's aptly titled Lucifer 3. Now, this album picks up exactly where Lucifer 2, their previous album, left off, and that is not a bad thing. For those of you not familiar with this band, they are based out of Stockholm, Sweden, and they are female fronted. The music is sort of traditional 1970s heavy metal, a bit doomy at times, some really big riffs, but it's combined with those clean female vocals. And at times, the hooks on these songs are almost poppy. Another thing I'm digging about this album is the production. It's no frills, but there are some cool things to it. For example, some of the guitar riffs are doubled by what sounds like a grand piano, which really helps fill out the sound. That's a technique that producer Bob Ezrin did not produce this album, but I'm talking about albums that Bob Ezrin has produced, like Alice Cooper's $1 Billion Babies and Kiss's Destroyer. He sort of employed that technique of doubling guitar and bass lines with grand piano, which really works. As I said, helps fill out the sound. And while I really am digging this album, if I did have one complaint, it's that the songs tend to sound very similar. Also, I've said this before, I'm not crazy about the name of this band. It's sort of, they're kind of going for the low-hanging fruit. It's kind of a really obvious name. But other than that, really digging the band and really digging this release. Well worth checking out. Here's one that's a little bit different. This is Preservation Hall Jazz Band with its 2013 release called That's It. And when I posted this on Instagram, some of you were surprised, and actually I was too, that this came out on Sub Pop, a label known for alternative rock. And this is obviously not alternative rock. This is traditional New Orleans jazz, including both instrumental stuff and music featuring vocals. Now, the history of this band goes way back to the early 1960s, and obviously the lineup has completely changed, but they're really still helping preserve that New Orleans sound. That said, I had a major issue with this one again. I'm not sure if you can see it here, but I'll put a picture on the screen, that this record came majorly scuffed straight out of the sleeve. And we've talked about this issue many times on this channel. It is extremely frustrating, but Sub Pop was really cool about it. I sent them an email. They apologized and they promised to get me a new copy of this album. as soon as they can. I guess their warehouse is temporarily shut down in Seattle, at least at the time of recording this video. So hopefully my replacement copy is better than this one. But the music is really cool. As I said, I dig that traditional New Orleans jazz sound. And if you're curious at all, this is obviously available on the streaming services, and I would suggest, anyway, is well worth checking out. All right. Here's another album we've talked a lot about on this channel. This is the 2020 release from Ozzy Osbourne called Ordinary Man. I'm not going to recap my whole issue with this album, but basically I had to return the first 2 copies I got. They were on black wax and they were scuffed and they were warped and they sounded horrible. So I ended up getting this copy. This is the exclusive version from Urban Outfitters. It's colored vinyl. It's got, I'm not sure if you can make it out here. I'll put some pictures on the screen here though, but so I got the foil on the Ozzy logo and on the Ordinary, man, this is hard with the light, and on the Ordinary Man title. And as I say, it's gatefold. It comes with a poster. And this version is far better than at least those 2 black versions I had. It's still not great. I mean, this album has an inherent problem in that all of them are pressed really quietly. And as a result, you have to turn the volume up, and that makes a lot of the cracks and hisses and pops more audible, which in some ways makes it difficult to listen to. I've been streaming it probably more than I've actually listened to the vinyl, but I am keeping this version. I figured this is as good as it's gonna get, and I'm really digging this record. I think that this is probably Ozzy's best release since Osmosis. I know some of you, or many of you maybe, disagree with me, preferring maybe some of the heavier stuff he's done in recent years, and this one definitely has more melodic than his past couple albums. A lot of that is due to producer Andrew Watt, who also played all the guitars. That's another, not all the guitars, but the majority of guitars. That's another issue I had with this album, the fact that Zach wasn't on there, and this unknown producer dude, unknown to many of us in the hard rock community, in the metal community, playing the majority of guitars. But, you know, in listening to it, I think he did a fairly decent job. And there's some cool guest appearances on here by Slash and Tom Morello, and of course, Elton John. My favorite cuts in this album are All My Life. Great song. And I like the singles as well. I think my least favorite track has so far been Eat Me. It's got a cool riff, but the lyrics, they just don't work for me. Anyway, still listening to this, and in terms of releases so far in 2020, this is probably my favorite. I also want to show you this one. This is the latest release from Body Count, featuring none other than Mr. Ice-T on vocals. This album is called Carnivore. This is black vinyl, and it's pressed immaculately. This is a great pressing. It was relatively cheap, and it also came with the CD. It came with the poster, came with the Body Count logo embossed here on the front cover. I mean, the packaging is just 10 on 10, so I have to give these guys, or their label, kudos for that. In terms of the music, Body Count has definitely been on a roll. This is their 3rd album since 2013, and all his albums have been great. This one's probably the weakest of the bunch. My favorite was Manslaughter. Nonetheless, it is a good listen. The title Carnivore is sort of an anti-vegan track, and it's sort of in praise of meat and eating meat. I love meat, so I am completely cool with that. What else can I tell you about this album? Kind of like the Lucifer one. It came out in late March, just before everything went crazy in the world and everything shut down. So I feel bad for those 2 bands, because as a result, I think these albums were largely ignored. So if you're looking for something cool and new to listen to, I would recommend this Body Count album, as well as that Lucifer album I showed earlier in this video. Oh, before I forget, one other thing I wanted to mention. This album contains a cover of Motorhead's Ace of Spades. I was really excited to hear that they're going to cover that song, because Body Count likes to include at least one cover on all their albums, but I was a bit disappointed by it. I mean, they do a good job of it, but they almost do too good of a job. They're completely faithful to the original. I was hoping they would try something a bit different with it. Anyway, that's cool. My favorite tracks on this one are Another Level and Bum Rush. All right, guys, those are the albums I have picked up so far in 2020. It's a small stack, but it's a mighty stack. As I said, I'm being more selective. Let me know what you thought of these releases in the comments below. Otherwise, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Also, click that bell notification like everyone else tells you to do. Dear 33ers, I hope each and every one of you has a fantastic week. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll be back here again in 7 days. Same number on your dial. Until then, dear 33ers, keep on spinning.